Welcome to Season 4 of Writing Black Joy, a virtual space that celebrates, centers, and promotes the voices of Black storytellers with joyful and uplifting stories. Here, you'll find conversations with some of my favorite Black creatives, learn more about their projects and the joy they're bringing into the world, hear more about their creative processes, and find inspiration for your own creative projects. I am Sophia Robinson, and I am a story listener, an author, and a creative. I'm honored to bring you these conversations that get to the heart of the Black joy that these creatives are writing on history's pages. So hit subscribe and settle in as we go to today's guest. Welcome back to Writing Black Joy. Now, I'm not someone who tends to have favorite things, so don't ask me about a favorite book or a favorite film. But the truth is, there are a few places where I do have favorites. So, I have a favorite big sister, I have a favorite little sister, I have a favorite niece, I have a favorite older nephew, and I have a favorite younger nephew. And today, I should say that this might be my favorite guest of the season so far, possibly even the podcast. It's my favorite little sister, Talibah. So Talibah is first and foremostly my sister. She's also a teacher, a mom, a wife, and an artist. And she's also a lifelong journaler, collector of lovely journals and stationery, and a bibliophile who is fascinated by minimalism or living with less. So, you've probably noticed by now that this mini-series is a little bit different from my usual podcast episodes. And I've loved having it as an excuse to have some of my favorite people on the show to talk about the things that light them up. And for my younger sister Talibah, journaling is one of those things. If you see the image for the podcast cover, you'll see some of the journals she's written in over her lifetime, and that is not even all of them. Journaling is an integral part of her life, and so we had a fun conversation. It was just like one of our over the dinner table conversations, of course, with coasters. So come and sit with us and hear all about Talibah's definition of journaling and why she finds it so useful, stationery, why she has different journals for different topics, her different journaling styles and how she incorporates her art, as well as how this is spilled into other forms of creativity, how her journaling practice has grown over the years, the power of writing to impact how you remember the past, what she does with all of those journals, and how discovering minimalism and simple living changed how she thought about her journals. In addition, we talk about how motherhood has influenced her thinking about her journals and so much more. Now, my favorite things about these conversations is the idea of creating your own journaling practice. And I hope that by listening, you walk away with something new to try to incorporate for your own journaling routine. Hopefully, this conversation will give you some new ideas or ways to think about your own journaling practice. So here it is, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Welcome to my series, Writing Your Inner World. And I've got one of my favorite people in life as my guest, my sister. She's my favorite little sister and one of my two favorite sisters. Seems fair to leave?
Yeah, seems fair.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. I can no longer call Nkosi my favorite nephew, but I can still call you my favorite little sister.
Yeah, please.
I like that. So, because I decided I was going to have a mini series about journaling, and you are the queen of the journal, I was like, I can't not have you because that would just be wrong. So, thank you so much for joining me. So, I want you to tell me, when is the first time you remember writing in a journal?
Okay, I remember when I was, that's a hard one. It might be 19. I still have a journal. I'd have to find it. I wasn't in secondary school, so I was under the age of 11. And someone gave me a 5-year journal.
Oh.
Actually, that was Tanya.
Oh.
A little red journal with a lock on it. So I wrote a couple times in there, very, very seldom, but that was the first time I wrote in a journal. And then I also got another little white one when I would have been about 10. And that one I used to take to school with me and I used to write stuff in it. So that was more, I got way more used to that one.
Nice. And I want to say, did you always enjoy it? But do you enjoy it? Do you enjoy journaling, or do you find it more functional than enjoyable, or both?
Let me first clarify when I say journaling, what I mean, because recently I've discovered bullet journaling, illustrative journaling, all the things, all the things.
Oh
So
yeah, that's true. We should probably go back to that. What do you mean when you say journaling?
I recently learned about the morning pages, which is what's it called, free writing, where you just conscious a stream of consciousness.
Stream of consciousness, yeah.
So I would say that's probably the closest thing. As I said, I only learned about it recently, but that is basically how I've been journaling most of the time. Sometimes I use it as a record, like this is what I did today, this is what I did yesterday, this is what I plan to do tomorrow. But for the most part, I use it as I see it as a necessity. So how I used to describe it is I don't write because I enjoy writing. I write because I have to write. Like I don't have a choice. If I
Mm,
don't write, I might just explode. So
please
I
explode.
yeah.
I'm not writing. I'm not cleaning that up. Please don't. And Nyla's not gonna clean it up either. So you're gonna have to either Rolando will have to do it or you Josie. So don't do that.
Well, I'm you keep me well stocked in my journals, so and so does Rolando. So I have no worries. Lots of journals to use in the near future and distant future. I got plenty, so
Mm.
we're good to go. Um, but do I enjoy it? Yeah, I enjoy it. I definitely enjoy it. I enjoy, normally at the end of my journal, I would say, thank you for being my journal and keeping my thoughts. Like I always be sure to thank the book because it's, as I said, it's a necessity. So in that way, it's functional more than just out of a hobby or pleasure.
Hmm. Okay. Nice. So you kind of like, so it sounds to me like you kind of like process your thoughts or process your day. Is that kind of
Yes,
how you would
definitely.
describe it?
So it helps me to gain some perspective on whatever I'm going through. And the great thing about the journal is that if you're going through something, you can talk about it 10 times. Like nobody's going to care. Your journal is not going to tell you, oh, yeah, no, my goodness, shut up. Your journal is not going to tell you, oh, honey, you need to move on from that. Your journal is just going to hold the word. So I, that's what I love about the journal. Like there's no limit to how many times you can go over the same darn thing. So that helps me process um, whatever it is that's happening, be it good, be it bad, even other people's stuff. So for my like high school, secondary, teenage years, I used to write about what other people were going through because I didn't have anywhere else to process it. Like if someone tells you a secret, you can't go around and tell someone, "Oh, I know this is really stressful. I need to talk about it," because obviously it's personal. So I could write it in my journal. So I processed my stuff and my response to other people's stuff, which also helped me, I think, to be a better friend, to gain perspective. Like instead of someone, like when someone tells me the umpteenth time about their ex-boyfriend that they're back together with again, who mistreated them horribly, I don't just scream at them. But I can be as biting and as sarcastic as I want in my journal.
That is
So
true.
it's probably saved a couple friendships too.
I see. I see. I imagine you must have written my name in that journal at some point.
Who, me? Would I do that?
He was like, no, of course not. Never read my journal, Sophia. Never. That's funny. That's funny. So I know that there was a point in time when you had a lot of different journals for a lot of different topics, shall we call them?
Hmm.
What
Hmm.
made you what made you separate them out?
Okay, that's a good question. So generally, I would keep just a plain, like in the past, I've kept exercise books, I've kept books. I really like, my preference is hardback books because then you don't need a desk. You can just write on your lap and it will be stable. Um, I've gone through big books, little tiny ones. I'm very picky about my paper. I don't want it to bleed through. That's when you depend on the other side. That just gets me annoyed. I'm very picky about my pens as well. Um, Simple ballpoint is good enough for me. Black. Has to be black. Although I've gone through blue. Don't do blue. It doesn't. It looks good at the time, but then like 10 years later, you're like, what is this? This is
Doesn't
all
age.
over the place. Doesn't
Doesn't
age
age.
well at all.
Yeah.
So if black changes, it might change to green, but it's still readable. But what were you asking me? You asked me, well, how do I choose what journal to use? So I generally use big notebooks. Sometimes they're actual journals, but those tend to be more expensive. And I don't write in my journals every day. There are times when I would go 6 months without writing in the journal. But
Really?
I eventually come back to them. The times I've gone a year without writing in the journal.
Wow.
But as I said, eventually something will happen. I'll have to pick it back up. So, but the thing that I like to differentiate is I keep a spiritual journal as well. So if I'm reading the Bible or if I am listening to, sermons in church or wherever,
Mm.
I like to keep those separate from my everyday stuff. Sometimes I've done it together, but then I find when I want to go back and look at a certain passage or verse, then I encounter, oh, I saw Fred this morning, and I'm like, I don't want to think about Fred. I'm looking for Jesus. So I had to keep that separate.
Like, no, Fred, just Jesus. I thought you covered.
So I generally keep it.
Separate.
That would be my differentiation thing. Like I have a journal for spiritual stuff and what I call a personal journal. I've tried out with different things. I've tried out with journals for bullet journals. I've just discovered them like maybe 3-4 years ago, and that's been fun. I've tried a reading journal. So if I read a book, I will write my thoughts on that book. That never really sticks. I have quite a few, um, but I still have them around, so they're useful to again process whatever you're reading about. And then I have writing books, which aren't journals, but they kind of are. So if I want to practice my own creative writing, I usually keep that separate as well.
Mm. Okay. And that actually brings me on to what I was going to ask about next, which was about journaling and if you are an artist,
Mm-hmm.
and all kinds of artists. So visuals, maybe drawing stuff, painting stuff, all kinds of artists. So when you journal, is it just words? Do you find that you draw pictures to help? Like, does that ever come into play? I know you write poems. Does that ever?
Okay, yeah. So I I normally have a separate book of poems and songs if I do write those. But when it comes to drawing, I'll draw wherever. So I do have sketchbooks, but if something calls for a design or a pattern or a picture, I'll draw it. And it's not, like I said, recently I discovered illustrative journaling. So I wasn't doing that before. It would just be something to illustrate what I was trying to do. I do have a few journals where I went deep and I would illustrate, like I illustrated the whole alphabet in Bible verses. So that was fun, and that was a regular journal slash creative, artistic journal. But generally, it's just like little emojis or little pictures or things at the side, and then I'll try to keep a sketch pad, a sketchbook, which I never do, but I've been trying for years, and I'll keep trying. And
Mm.
then I really enjoyed illustrative journaling, so I tried that for about a few months, like 4 or 5 months when I was at home. So I was off from work, so I had a bit more time to do it, and I loved it. But it's not impossible to do when you have a full-time job. It's not. It depends on you, because I mean, you can do a 5-minute drawing. That's what I've been trying to tell myself, but I haven't been able to keep it up since I started that work. So
Yeah. Was that when you did? That wasn't when you did the books of the Bible drawing, is it?
no, no, this was so illustrative journaling. You journal specifically about what you did that day,
Mm.
and you illustrate it. So if I
Okay.
made some special soup, I might draw a bowl of soup. Or if I went out with my sister, like I have like that one where my sister went off to have a baby. I drew
I
the
saw that.
picture that I took of
Wasn't
her
me, by the
going
way.
off.
I'm not the sister.
Yeah, not the other sister.
The other sister.
So um yeah, I do enjoy that, but also I can't wrap my head around how to do it every single day. So I'm trying again. Like that's the most recent iteration of my current bullet journal that you got me. I've started January strong. I think I've illustrated for 4 days, but I'm determined to get into it because people on YouTube say it's the greatest thing they've ever done, and it really helped their artist development. So
Yeah,
I want to get into it.
I have to say that you remember for a while I got really obsessed with sketch notes. That sounds very similar to sketch notes.
Yeah.
And I think because I've never really considered myself to be a visual person. I don't have that eye for like that visual eye. Like to me, when I think about what comes naturally to me, it's always words. It's never like pictures or anything visual. But I wanted to find a way to translate some of my ideas into visuals. And so when I did the sketchnoting like course, I thought honestly, I thought there was going to be some big secret to it. Like, oh, there's a big secret to it, and they were like, "There's no big secret to it. What's the thing you're thinking of? What the diagram would you use to represent it? There, you've got a sketch note." I'm like, really? Was that what I've been like putting off all along? So in November last year, every day I just drew one thing that represented my day. So, or two things. So like just for example, there was one day that I had avocado toast for breakfast. I came to my friend's house and she made me avocado toast for brunch. It's the friend that I'm staying with now. And so I drew an avocado and some nice bread. That was it. Nothing. Yeah. I can still remember. I mean, like, I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, but I can remember that in November, my friend made me avocado toast. So that was it. So it was just about just calling back to my day and thinking like, what's one thing I want to remember about this day? What image can I use to do it with? So there was one where I was on the train and I sat down to reread a book that I wrote years ago that I call Trash Novel, but the name of it at the time was Breadfruits for Christmas. And so I looked up a picture of a breadfruit and I drew the breadfruit. And that just like, so yeah, so every day I just drew one thing that I wanted to remember from the day. And it didn't actually take me that long.
Yeah.
And I enjoy, like, by the end of it, I had a page just full of like little diagrams and I loved it. That made me happy. So what I found was that after I got into the habit of pairing my ideas with images, my designs got so much better. Like my graphic designs. I'm not a graphic designer, but I like to play with Canva. That's like my entertainment. And I just found I was getting so many more graphic ideas. And so it just made me think like, you know, it was the same with writing. I used to think that first the idea would come and then the execution. Sometimes I feel like you have to start executing in order for the ideas to come. And I actually felt that way with when I started sketchnoting.
Yeah, I've definitely heard people talk about that. Not so much with sketchnoting, but with like journaling about your day. I think it's like 3 lines or something. One guy swears by it. He's like, he can remember every single day for the past 10 years using this method.
Yes.
Because just that act of putting something on paper, something specific, something exciting, something you were passionate about, helped him to remember every day. And I was like, wow, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to remember every day though, but there's a guy, and I'll try to put the link in the comments. Not in the comments, I'll try to link in the show. There's this guy whose YouTube I watch, and he talks about homework for life. And he said this is actually how he comes up with ideas for like blog, whatever. And every day he'll write this homework for life. And it's just like a couple of sentences of something that impacted him that day, whether it's an idea that he had or something that he thought about or something that physically happened to him. And I started doing that last year. I started myself and a friend of mine started doing homework for life. And that is what turned into the daily email.
Okay.
Yes, the daily email that I used to write. I spent about 6 months probably writing a daily email to a friend of mine and my sister. That was it. In fact, when I started, it was only my friend. It was my audience of one. And I think I might have to do an entire episode on writing for an audience of one because it actually really did change my writing. But yeah, that's what Homework for Life became, an audience of one. It became my daily newsletter, which I've recently been dipping my toes into again.
Yeah, nice.
So yeah, so there's something about writing. I always feel like it's one of those things that it's magical, but when you describe it like that, it almost sounds a bit trite. But to me, I always feel there's something about putting things down, like you said, that just
Mm-hmm.
transform them if you,
Yeah,
if you let it.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So what's next for your journaling? It sounds to me like you've discovered a whole new world of different types of journaling.
So, as I said, I discovered morning pages, and I really, really like. But it takes a while. It's like 20 minutes a day of just free writing, and the reason I like it is because it's gotten me back into the habit of journaling on a regular basis. So I want to keep up with that, or at least as often as I can.
Mhm.
And then, and even that's a little different from what I was doing before because you don't always have to journal when you have something to say. So sometimes you have nothing to say and you're still supposed to find something to write for 3 pages. So you just write and the next thing and the next thing. And then you keep writing that until something pops into your head. So thankfully I haven't had to do that yet. Something's always popped into my head.
I was gonna say
But
your head's like my head, never empty. Stuff always in there.
oh, it's popping in there. So I'm liking that. I'm digging into the bullet journal and I am really liking it as because you can make it what you want. And that's the whole concept of it. Some people just kind of, I don't want to say they go overboard. I think what I would say is you do you. So for some people, they have to, I have one person I follow on YouTube and she says, if it's not pretty, she will not maintain it. She will not keep it up. So it's her daily planner and she has to make it pretty. So she wants to look at it. And that's what works for her.
Nice.
Um, for me, I really like the structure of a planner I just discovered last year, which we then had to recreate because I wasn't able to find another one, which is literally a planner. Like you write whatever your tasks are for the day. And then what I liked about it is that you can see the month at a glance, the week at a glance. And if you want, you can put just a day at a glance. So that's the beauty of bullet journaling. You can do that as well, but you have to do it out yourself. So
Set it
it's
up.
time consuming.
Mm.
Yeah, you just set it up. But I'm trying to get into bullet journaling because I saw this really neat video, as you can tell, I watch way too much YouTube, where the lady said she watched so many people bullet journaling. It never worked for her until she made it her own.
Mm.
And what she did is she time blocks her day, but in bullet journal form, and it allows her then on the days that she wants the whole page, she can use the whole page. On the day that she wants 2 pages, she can use 2 pages. A day that she doesn't want a page, she doesn't have to write anything. There's no pressure. And so she likes having the whole day laid out, every day, a space to put it, and then some place to put the whole week at a glance, the whole week at a glance. So when I read that, when I watched that, I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. I wouldn't mind making it into what I want it to be.
Mm.
Another thing I've recently discovered is the 5 minute journal, which is I'm not sure if it's a book, but it's definitely like if you type it in, you can see the structure of it. You can buy books where you just do 3 things you're grateful for, 3 things you want to accomplish that day, and then one affirmation. And then in the evening time, you do 3 amazing things that happen and how could I have made today better. And I like that because it literally takes 5 minutes. It
Mm.
helps you to focus on gratitude, which is supposed to be really useful for, um, you know, making you a more positive person or whatever gratitude is supposed to do. And as I said, it just takes 5 minutes. So that is good for productivity and gratitude combined. So those are the 3 things that I've been working on recently: the morning pages slash just regular journaling, the bullet journal where I want to do illustrative journaling, and the morning pages,
Mm.
which actually works out to quite a lot of time in a book if I
I was
do
gonna
all
say
3 in one day.
you were like a 5 minute journal, but also I want to do the thing that takes 20 minutes and the thing that takes me an hour. I want to do all the things.
The thing.
Oh, you're hilarious. I love that. I love that. That sounds great. what do you do with your journals when you're done? This is a
Right.
conversation that we've been having
Yeah.
off and on for the last year. So tell me, what do you do with your journals when you're done?
I just keep them. And I was satisfied with that. One time years ago, I was ready to throw them away. Sorry, my friend was like, "No way, don't throw them away. She'll store them for me." And I thought, well, if she values them so much, I should probably value them. So I never did throw them away. But recently, I've discovered minimalism
Mm.
and simple living, and I don't want to maintain, as one of my favorite YouTubers says, so much inventory. Um, so I'm kind of ready to get rid of them. So I have a stack of journals the same height as me.
Yeah.
You can attach the picture in the notes.
That's gonna be the picture for this podcast episode. Oh, definitely. I love that.
So it can get a bit like 20 years of journaling adds up. No matter how small the book is and how little you write in it, it's adding up. So what helped me a lot was someone that said, I forget the context, but anyways, they were saying that when you journal, it's it's to help you to process. So when you're finished journaling, the journal has done its job. You don't need to keep it. You don't need to read it over. You don't need to go back there. It has helped you process, and that helped me a lot with letting go my journals. I still haven't let them go, by the
Yeah,
way.
it helped you a lot with the idea of letting go of the journal, the
Yeah.
theory of letting go of the journal.
But it also made me realize, like, part of my journal is that I want, you know, like, okay, mother died when I was 4. I have very little information about her. And I've always thought to myself, if I write a journal, then one day, if my daughter needs it, she'll be able to learn about me. But recently, I was doing journals, and even if my daughter likes to read, which, I finally got a daughter, let me put
Did
that in
you
there.
have a daughter?
Didn't have,
A lovely
didn't
daughter.
have for 20 years. So now I've got one. And she does like to read. I mean, she's 2, so a lot could change, but right now she
Yeah.
loves reading.
Likes to pretend to read. And everybody else is reading.
Oh, she's reading. So I told myself, even if I have a daughter and she likes to read, there's no way that I don't even want to read through 20 years of journals. There's no way she's going to want to do that. And nor should I put that on her, wherever she may want to live in Australia. Who's carting a person weight full of journals across the sea?
Exactly.
So that's not fair. So recently I've come to the conclusion that I am going to go through every one of them. There's some really good ideas in there. I'll save the ones that might be inspiration for pictures I want to draw or ideas I want to pursue, and just save the pages as opposed to the whole book. And I also got inspired to write a book, to write a little kind of like a memoir for my daughter, which will be way more realistic. I mean, she might still not read it, but at least
A lot
it'll just
more
be
likely
everything I
to
want.
read one
Yeah,
book than she is to read 20 years worth of books, though.
so everything I want to say to her at this particular stage in my life, based on, the past 20, 30 years, and put it in one place. So that's kind of been my inspiration now to think, maybe I want to write a book, which is something I never thought about before in this. Like, I always assumed I'd write a book, it would be like a children's book or a fiction or something. But
Mm.
a memoir, I've never been into that kind of thing. But this is more specific. I don't want to share it with the world necessarily, just, for my daughter
Yeah.
and whoever else might come after her.
Special journal.
Yeah. So that's what I've decided to do with my journal. So I'll keep the current ones. If I sometimes I write in 5 different ones at the same time, just because, like I said, one for reading, one for writing, one for daydreaming, one for spiritual, one for bullet journaling, one for planning. So sometimes I have 5 or 6 on the go, but I'm ready to get rid of the rest. It remains to be seen when that's going to happen. But I think that they did their job and they've done it quite well. So that's my plan for old used journals.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Or maybe you can make it into a paper mache and make something.
Yeah.
No, don't do that.
Yeah.
No,
because
no,
it'll keep me
no.
around even longer.
Just stop.
I
Just
recently
stop.
discovered paper weaving a couple years back, and I mean, it was awesome. I saw some really amazing paper weavers in person and online, And I was just like, this is what I want to do with my life. And I tried rolling a few, like, you have to roll 100 before you can even start a project, 100 pages. And so I rolled a few hundred pages and I'm like, I'm done. That was enough for me. So, no to the paper weaving, paper mache, but I don't know. I like, as you said, I like all things arty. So who knows what I'll come up with this summer,
Oh, summer plans as usual.
as usual.
Sounds good to me. Sounds good to me.
Mm.
So anything else you want to go into? I know you talked a bit about minimalism and I like to call it living with less. How has that impacted your journaling practice? Has it impacted your journaling practice?
Um, yes, because, well, again, in theory,
In
because
there.
before, if I came across a journal or someone gifted me a journal that I didn't like because of the paper or the size between the lines were too narrow or too far apart, I would keep it and tell myself, oh, I'll use it one of these days. Now I think I'll be more willing to let it go. So that is kind of how that has impacted kind of what I keep, um,
Mm,
based on what others give me. But no, I'll still be, to me, minimalism is having space for the things that you want. And if that means that you love books, then you can have 1,000 books. So you can and still be quote unquote a minimalist, although people might not agree with me. But that's my definition of minimalism. Like it's if you can manage what you have and you have enough space for what you love, go for it.
yes, you can
So
be
I
minimalist
still,
bibliophile.
yes, exactly. I'm still a bibliophile. I still love my books. I want them with me. I had them in storage, and now I'm like, I can't have them in storage. I want them where I can see them. So
Mm,
I'm a bibliophile, and I want to kind of mesh that with minimalism. So I want to keep just the ones I really like, the ones I want to go back to, the ones I want my daughter to find on the shelf. Like some of the books I read were, on the shelf in my house, and that's why I read them, and they were good reads. So I
yeah.
kind of want to create that atmosphere for her, but not overwhelming with books. Like
Not overwhelming her with the books that are going to topple over on top of her.
exactly.
Oh dear. That's fair. Oh, so nice. I'm so glad we got to have this conversation. I always need
Yeah,
next.
and sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, and I was one thing I did want to say, based on the previous conversation we had about the same topic, is that, someone might be concerned about what I mentioned, the ruminating. They may think to themselves, if I don't have a journal, I won't write the same thing 100 times. And I don't want to ruminate. It's causing me to ruminate. But to me, from my personal experience, the journal doesn't cause me to ruminate. I'd be ruminating whether or not I was writing. But as I said, it gave me an outlet in which, and when I'm done, I can throw away the pages. I can tear them up, throw them away, burn them. Gives me a sense of closure. Gives me a feeling of you know, like that song "Wash That Man Right Out of Here," like that kind of sense of closure of getting rid of the thoughts that you just want to get rid of. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I like that. Maybe one day I'll try journaling for longer than a month. Uh, by the time this episode airs, I would have done my at least one solo episode where I talk about my own journaling. And so I may or may not have spoken about my my journaling experiment, I called it. But you will either have heard more about it or you will hear more about it.
Cool. It was really good talking to you. I'm so glad that you're choosing one of my favorite things to do.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah. Surprising. People I think when I made the suggestion, because I asked you to be a guest, I've got some other guests lined up, but the other guest episodes that I'm recording this weekend, when I told them, they were like, but you don't journal, Saf. And I was like, no, you're right. But I'm just fascinated. I've always been fascinated by the power of writing.
yeah,
And so I think that
definitely.
you can't talk about that without talking about journaling.
Absolutely. I remember I did a writing workshop, and the coordinator said that she sees journaling as masturbation for writing,
What?
because you're doing it by yourself. You're not sharing it with anyone. You journalists out there need to share your writing with the world. And so she was kind of negative about it, but I think that, as I said at the beginning, for me, it helps me to process. It helps me to put things in perspective. And it does help with my writing whenever I do choose to write. So it it's true. I probably there are some things I probably need to share with others because it might help them process some of the things too, but I'll get
Yeah.
there.
I think for me, a part of it is like, we're both musicians. And I've been a musician for a long time. And, I think about the amount of music that I've played. Right now I'm in a choir. I think about the amount of songs that we sing, the amount of scales and songs and stuff that we sing versus our performances, right?
Yeah.
For every 4 hours of performance, we've rehearsed like 20, 30 hours.
Yeah.
To me, there's so many other forms of creativity where it's just expected and accepted that there's a lot of practice.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow people think when they've written like 5 sentences, they're like, it has to be perfect. It has to come perfectly out of my head and onto this piece of paper.
I have to share it with the world.
Why? Right?
Don't do that.
We started our rehearsals for choir this term a couple of weeks ago. And I was saying to one of my work colleagues, I'd forgotten how bad we sound at the beginning. Because right at the beginning of this term, we're learning all the songs. Nothing's coming together. Everybody's making mistakes. At the end, it sounds lovely. But you have to go through that kind of like, ugh, before it gets to that stage. And I'd forgotten how bad. We don't sound bad, but you know what I mean, right? But I also think that it's very easy to get trapped into your journal and want, I meet a lot of people who say to me, they want to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
When I ask them, do you write? Yeah, I journal. But they somehow are afraid to make that leap out of their journal. So I might do another episode on that. We'll see. But I definitely have a blog post about it that I'm going to post because I wrote last year. So one way or the other, I'll be talking a bit about that as well. But I think you have to strike the balance. You don't have to perform every song you learn, but you get so much out of the performance. And I think the same is true about sharing your writing. You don't have to share everything you write. You need that. You need to get those thoughts out of your head. You need to build your voice. But at some point, it's nice to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it.
So think of your journal as your rehearsal. Trust me, you don't want anybody to hear that rehearsal. So, all right. Well, thanks for joining me.
Oh, so nice being here. Thanks for having me.
Yes. We'll have to come up with an idea for our podcast. We'll keep working on it.
Yeah.
Great. All right, folks. Thanks, Talibah, and I'll see you soon.
Yep. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today. You can find out more about our guests in the notes below, and don't forget to hit subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss new episodes when they drop. And if this has inspired you to get your own writing project into the world, click on my website below and learn how you can work with me as a writing coach or an editor. Until next time, I send you big love from a small island.